still part of the systems innovation team here in London, our hub. We've got Hannah and Manali back there. There's about 5, 6 other members also in our hub. This is actually part of Systems Innovation Platform, which is a website I actually set up about 7 years ago. We're originally an e-learning website, so started very humble backgrounds, just put a video up on YouTube actually teaching people about systems thinking, and got a few views and people were interested, so put a few more up, and that's where it started and kind of iterated on that. That was about 7 years ago. Now we're kind of a global community of about 10,000 members around the world. There's about 20 hubs in different cities around the world. And our content is used by a lot of different people. About 1 million people every year actually watch the videos, and a lot of different universities and so forth. So that's the overall website. And with the London Hub team, we just got set up about 10 months ago. And yeah, that's that. And I'm here to actually give you a presentation on systems innovation, what this is. So actually Hannah produced these slides for me. This is the first time I've ever done a presentation where someone else produced the slides for me, so I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure. Hopefully there'll be no surprises for me in here anywhere, but here we go. So actually you wanted to start with this, right? The kind of potential of these ideas. And that's what initially motivated me when I first discovered systems thinking and complexity theory about 10 years ago. Got really fascinated by it and discovered how relevant these ideas are for the kind of wicked, complex challenges we face in the world. And that's why I set up the website, and it's still why I'm kind of part of this. Captures Rob Rixigliano. He says, for many of you may have been enticed by the people who talk about the promise of systems thinking to improve the world around us. And if you have not already, you will soon find a big gap between the promise and the practice. So for me, these are pretty powerful and revolutionary ideas. I think they have huge potential, but as he says here, a lot of it hasn't been realized yet. We haven't really figured out how to apply this in design, in management, in finance and policy making. It has application in many different areas, but we figure that out. So that's kind of where it starts, and it's part of what our organization, what our hub is about. How do we really put these ideas to work and realize their potential? How many people have actually heard of systems thinking here in this room? Okay, about half, a bit more than half, that's pretty good. Okay, so yeah, current context. Well, yeah, this one speaks to that, right? This is data I got from Google Ngram, how many times this word showed up in a book in the year 2019. And you can see systems thinking is quite relatively well known. Actually, a lot of people have heard of that. And there's systems innovation, right? So we're kind of trying to create a movement here, but we're just a little bit on the side of systems thinking. And then these other things, systems change and complexity science. So that's just to give you an idea of how well known these ideas are. And this here is a little bit the landscape of the different terms, some of which you may have heard of. There's a lot of them here. This is actually a huge kind of vast body of ideas, complexity science, systems thinking, systems change, and systems design or systemic design. And these are really a whole set of ideas about a more holistic way of looking at the world. That's what systems thinking is. And complexity science is about understanding complex systems and complex networks. Systems change is about kind of a transformational kind of change. And systems design is about designing and developing systems. And people often ask me when I show them this, where's systems innovation? And maybe it's a bit of all of them. So that's a little bit of the ideas behind this. And a lot of people start on this journey. How many people have heard of wicked problems? Okay, cool. So a lot of people start on this journey by hearing this word, wicked problem, and recognizing that some problems out there in the world, and they're simple, and there are other ones which are complex. And a lot of kind of traditional approaches that apply to simpler problems don't necessarily apply for these things we call wicked problems, which are highly complex problems. I'll talk about them now in a minute. Maybe I'll just skip over that one. Sorry, Hannah, I'm not sure why you put that one in, but this is a wicked problem. These are wicked problems. So financial instability, inequality, water crisis, urban sprawl, cybersecurity, political paralysis. You know, what we know about those is they're all highly kind of complex challenges. There's no simple solution to them. The way we solve simpler problems doesn't really apply to many of these. Right? Trying to fix a car or something is not the same as trying to solve for climate change. Because climate change is a complex problem. There's a complex system behind it. And we call it a wicked problem. Anybody else any other examples of wicked problems? Obesity, yeah.
Nutrition.
Yeah, maybe you've seen there's a quite well-known systems map of obesity here in the UK. And it's a vast map of like all the factors, and you wouldn't believe it. Like they're sprawling all over the place. The media, nutrition, you know, obviously whether they're getting exercise, education, so on and so forth. It's a wicked one. Any other ones?
Isn't asteroid hitting the Earth one? Or is that
that's not actually a wicked problem,
that's
no.
a problem?
Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, yeah, that would be a big problem, all right? Depends how big it is, though. Yeah.
Asteroid size.
Okay. Yeah. Any?
It's a wicked problem after it hits.
Yeah.
Biodiversity loss.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's a good example. Do we? Exactly. That's a really good example, right? And why are these? The thing that there's lots of ways of characterizing wicked problems. People talk about all different things, but for me, what characterizes them is they're systemic. They're part of the system, the very way the system works. What's the next slide? Okay, sorry, I got the wrong one there. But it's the problem emerges out of the very way that system actually works. It's not one part of it that we can kind of separate out and then try and fix that problem. It's actually the way the whole system is interacting. Another one might be, okay, maybe I'll give you a question. Do you think flying a rocket to the moon, is that a wicked problem or is that a complicated problem? Okay. Corruption in Poland, is that a wicked problem?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, you're getting the idea. You're good. Very good. So that's wicked problems. And then, so maybe you got the idea, we need new approaches when we're dealing with these wicked problems. And not just new thinking, systems thinking stuff. A lot of our kind of traditional ways of modern way of thinking, and particularly modern science, are characterized as being reductionist and quite analytical. Maybe you've heard of this. And it doesn't work well when dealing with these complex problems. Analytical thinking breaks a system up, separates the system out into its individual parts and tries to optimize or improve those individual parts. And that's not what these problems are. They're actually kind of networks of people interacting, like violent crime, knife crime in London, right? It's not one group of people. It's actually the way that people are sharing ideas. It's actually part of kind of the youth culture of those people. It's the way people are interacting within a social network. And you have to understand kind of the whole system, not just break it up into its individual parts. And that's why you need this systems thinking stuff to actually tackle complex problems. And you need to kind of shift from this linear planning approach, right? Normally when we have a problem, if we want to fly a rocket to the moon, we did that in the 1960s, and someone came along and said, right, we're going to fly a rocket to the moon in 10 years. And what happened then? They got lots of money, and a whole pile of people, a big bureaucracy, did a whole pile of planning, and they said, we'll do this, then we'll do that, we'll do that, we'll do that. And they went through a set of stages, and ultimately they got there, they flew the rocket to the moon. We haven't really got a plan like that for climate change. Well, there is no kind of plan like that for complex problems. What you actually have to do is deal with the system and the relationship between the parts, right? So it's getting to the idea that we're trying to shift from dealing with individual parts, fixing the individual parts in the system, to dealing with the way the parts are interrelated and organized. So systems innovation is about changing the structure of the relationships in the system. So if you think about that, violent crime, knife crime, was a big problem in Glasgow up until quite recently. And they tried to take a traditional kind of approach to that, where the police kind of deemed these people as criminals, right? And they tried to fix it a traditional way. More recently, they changed their approach and they started to think about violent crime as a kind of pandemic. And we had to think about it as a network, a social network, right? These were individuals within a social network, and it was spreading across that network. It's the culture of that network. One person, they were in these small cohorts of people, and that accepted behavior was shared within that network. And they started to think about it like that and think, okay, how can we start to disrupt and dismantle that network and change people's culture and thinking about violent crime? And actually, they've made huge progress in Glasgow on that. So that's what we mean by a different kind of approach, shifting from linear to non-linear. It's a new way of looking at the world, right? This kind of networked way of looking at the world. And new ways of organizing, more kind of networked approach to it. This is just another example. So systems innovation is innovation in systems instead of innovation in parts. So this is innovation in parts, an electric car or an autonomous car. We know a lot about that. This would be systems innovation, changing the structure of your city so that people don't need cars. Like a 15-minute city, maybe you've heard of that. Well, we can walk wherever we want to go. So that's what we're trying to do in systems innovation. We're not trying to fix parts. We're trying to change the structure, as I showed there about the network, so that the problem actually kind of disappears. We don't fix it, we actually dissolve it instead of solving it. Education, so that's the challenge, right? Next week, what would systems innovation look like in the context there? This is innovation, right? Maybe something like an e-learning platform. We have students looking at iPads, something like this. Innovation systems there, it might be actually changing the whole paradigm to think maybe education is not about students just learning content and teaching them content. It's maybe about them, their interests and what they want to learn. And maybe we could structure user or learner-centered education instead of teacher-centered education. That would change the paradigm, the mental model, and because you're changing that underlying mental model, the whole system actually would change if you started to change those underlying assumptions. And that would result in a different system, systems innovation. So it's this idea, dissolving problems instead of solving them by changing the structure of the system. And what counts as a systems innovation? It's intentional. It's intentionally trying to tackle a complex problem or a wicked problem. It's a change, as I was saying, about changing structure of the system, and also about changing mental models, the way people look at things and understand the system they form part of. And it's also, importantly, it's co-created. It's never done by one institution or one organization. It's a commitment to an inclusive process of change where many stakeholders, many people across the system actually change the system they form part of.